Okay. Let us continue with the Ascendance of Bookworm side stories. Gunter, my daughter's about to be a criminal? A previously unpublished chapter that appeared in the web novel around the time of Part 1, Volume 1. Gunter has to cope with Mine going to the forest for the first time after building up her stamina. He impatiently awaits her return, unaware of all the troubles surrounding her clay tablets. The other note says, I want to describe Mine's eyes changing colors from somebody else's perspective and ended up choosing Gunter to narrate. It was fun writing as him. When did her eyes change colors in front of him, though? The only time I would imagine that happening would have been when they had to go to the temple. So that was way later. And Gunter wasn't around when her eyes changed colors. She got pissed off at the kids who ruined her clay tablets. So when did this happen? I have a beautiful wife called Effa and 2 adorable daughters, Tuli and Mine. My youngest Mine actually looks a lot like Effa, but she's got an even prettier face. Dude, really? She's got your hair color and her eye color, kind of a lighter version, I guess. A way lighter version. But I guess you could say her resembles her mother. But she's got an even prettier face. It's how I know she's loved by the gods. Her sickness was a result of that love, too. I'm sure she's always falling unconscious because the gods are inviting her over all the time. What a nice way to think of it. No. I don't think so. Mine had pretty much always ended up with a fever the instant she pushed herself even a little too hard. But that wasn't really the case anymore. All of a sudden, completely out of the blue, she started trying to get better. And it was working. Sure, she'd also begun doing and saying weird things, but she was doing her best to build up stamina in her own way. It hadn't been too long ago when she needed to rest after taking a few steps outside, but after a season of dedication, she was able to walk all the way to the gate without stopping. Impressive, ain't it? My daughter's a hard worker. On top of that, Mine was real smart. Well, that's what I was told, at least. I was never any good at judging that kind of stuff myself. There wasn't a doubt in my mind about her being the real deal, though. Otto had always refused to hire any assistants. He called them dead weight, and always said they just waste his time, but now he was pretty much begging me to let Mine work under him. Otto had told me that Mine could spot calculation errors just from looking at finance reports, and had mastered the alphabet after just a bit of studying. Now she was learning about forms and letter templates. He'd also said that she kept a good eye on her surroundings, noticed even the slightest changes, and adapted her thinking to accomplish her goals. Apparently she was pretty much on a league of her own. The heck does all that mean? I only really followed about half of what Otto had said to me, but I understood the gist. My daughter was so smart that not even he could believe it. That's my daughter. She's really is loved by the gods. Today Mine was going to the forest for the first time. I was on the noon shift, so I was planning to welcome her back, but I was real worried. Calm down, Captain, Otto said. Huh? Yeah. She could reach the gate without issue, but what would she make it all the way to the forest? Even if she did, she wouldn't get to rest indoors like when she came to help Otto. She'd be stuck outside the whole time. Maybe the sun would make her sick or she'd collapse with a fever. I couldn't stop worrying about her. Captain, don't just stare off into the distance, Otto said. Mine would be so disappointed if she saw you like this. Otto, you don't ever say that. Then get back to work. She won't be back until evening, right? The real irritating thing was that Mine called this smug dope her teacher. Well, he was. He taught her the alphabet and taught her how to write. And after that, all she needed that was it. She really seemed to respect him, though she respects me a lot more, obviously. After all, she said I was the best back when I made her a crochet hook and that stick for Tuli's hair ornament. I tried to focus on my work and direct my subordinates, but I was nervous beneath the surface. The girls would come back soon, I was sure. Tuli was responsible, and she promised to leave the forest early. Given that Mine was so weak and slow, maybe they'd even start heading back around noon. Noon passed. It was still too soon for them to be heading back. That was obvious. The sun was starting its descent. Still nothing. They'd probably show up soon. More and more people were leaving the city, but there was still no signs of the kids. She promised to come back early, so it shouldn't be long now, Otto assured me. Please, Captain, stop glaring at everyone passing through. It's inappropriate. We'd reached the point of the day when there weren't as many farmers leaving the city after selling their crops, so there were people entering the city to return home or find an inn for the night. Mine and Tuli should have been showing up about now, too, but they were nowhere to be seen. So much for coming back early. This is taking too long. Tuli, weren't you going to come back sooner than usual? Has something happened to Mine? I could already picture Mine collapsed on the side of the road and Tuli panicking over what to do. No way was I going to wait around. Otto, I'm going to go search for him. And abandon your post? Oh, wait, look, isn't that Tuli? Where? Otto was standing on tiptoe and staring in the direction of the forest. He was taller than me, so he could see farther. She's just joined the end of the line of people coming to the gate. Let's work to get through them as quickly as we can. You can count on me. Immediately, I set about processing everyone trying to come through the gate, working at lightning speed so that Tuli and the others could get back into the city as soon as possible. The line was moving a lot faster than before, and it wasn't long before I could see the kids myself. Wait, did they just join the queue? Gang, you tricked me, Otto! But as they came closer, I noticed something. Mine wasn't with them. My eyes darted all over the place. Tuli was responsible. No way would she have abandoned her little sister. Tuli, where's mine? Lutz is going to bring her back later, she said. I think they'll arrive right before the gate closes. She turned back toward the forest, looking worried, but mine and Lutz were nowhere to be seen. If they were going to be back as late as she said, then that meant they hadn't left early. Didn't you promise to come back early, I asked? What happened? The other kids started exchanging conflicted looks. It was like they were all trying to hide something. Tuli, what in the world? A lot happened, Tuli said. Can I tell you about it later? We're running kind of late, so everyone's moms are probably worried. I need to get them all home. I wanted to stand my ground and demand that she spill it here and now, but she was gone before I could even try. The other kids followed after her, looking exhausted. The heck happened, I wondered aloud. Otto, any ideas? It can't be anything serious, or else they would have asked for help. He sounded completely disinterested, but Tuli usually tell me everything. Even when I didn't ask her to. It was no wonder that I was so worried. What's going on with mine? I paced back and forth in front of the gate, so anxious that I was starting to get frustrated. It wasn't until right before the gate was about to close that mine finally returned, pale and leaning against Lutz. Mine? Sorry, Dad. She apologized so quietly that I could barely even hear her before collapsing into my arms. Lutz helped me to remove the basket from her back, which was empty aside from a shovel. Then I hoisted her up. Lutz, what's going on? I shouted. What was she apologizing for? Probably for intentionally breaking her promise, he replied, rubbing his head. She started digging holes and making clay tablets all of a sudden. Then she got really mad at Faye's group and started crying. She was so all over the place that she'll probably be stuck in bed for at least 3 days. My eyes shot open. You didn't stop her? Lutz's face twisted into a grimace. Mr. Gunter, do you not think we tried? Obviously they'd done their best. It was because Lutz and Tuli had such a good track record of looking after mine that I felt safe leaving her in their hands to help with. Lutz in particular was such a good caretaker to mine that it was hard to believe they were the same age. Right, of course. My bad. Don't yell at Tuli either, Lutz said. She worked hard. Oh, but you can yell at mine, I did, though she basically ignored me. Mine's fever was getting worse while she was slumped in my arms and her pale face was beginning to turn red. Well, I'll leave her to you, Lutz said. I need to hurry home. Yeah, thanks for looking after her. You were a big help. I took mine into the waiting room and laid her down on one of the benches. It was pretty much her second home at this point. Her cheeks were even more flushed and she was breathing heavily. After speeding through the rest of my work, I picked mine up again and hurried home. Welcome back, Gunter, Effa said when I came through the door. Mine collapsed, didn't she? Without a moment's hesitation, Effa got mine changed and put her to bed. I took a seat at the table directly across from Tuli, eager to find out what had happened. So what's the deal? I asked. Lutz gave me a rough idea, but I want to hear your side of the story. Tuli shivered and gave me a wary look. She was such a diligent girl with a strong sense of responsibility. Maybe her desire to do everything perfectly was why she seemed so scared of messing up? Lutz told me not to get mad at you, I explained, trying to calm her down. He said that you did your best. He also said I had got every right to be angry at mine, so come on, what actually happened? Once she knew that I wasn't going to shout at her, Tuli softened up. Her eyes wandered around the room like she was trying to find the right words. Then she said, I don't actually know that much. Mine was tired as usual when we arrived at the forest, so she sat on a rock to catch her breath while Lutz and I went gathering. I remember thinking that we'd need to be quick since we were going to be leaving earlier. Makes sense. And then? Tuli frowned. Just as I was going to ask about us heading home, I heard mine scream. I rushed back to her, but by the time I arrived, she was already crying and yelling. She kept saying that Faye and the other boys ruined something she made. I couldn't even calm her down. That's how mad she was. She just kept saying that she'd make them pay. Lutz got her to stop crying in the end, but only by saying that he'd help her remake whatever it was that got ruined. I closed my eyes, trying to piece together the scene from what Tuli had told me. Nope, I still don't really understand it. Mine made something. Faye ruined it. Then she got angry? What was it that mine made, I asked. I don't really know. They're called tab-somethings. I think they're pretty much just humps of clay. Or lumps of clay. We were so late coming back because we were all making them together. I was still confused, but one thing was clear as day to me. So basically, mine broke her promise not to do anything in the forest. Probably. Mine had ignored her promise in order to make something, then that something had gotten ruined. Everyone had gotten wrapped up in helping her fix it, making them late to return, then she ended up sick again. She couldn't have been more troublesome if she tried. I'm not going to let mine go to the forest again, I concluded. What? No, Tuli exclaimed. Mine will get really mad. She had gone all pale for some reason, but I didn't care how angry mine got. I was angry at her for breaking the promise she'd sworn up and down she was going to keep. Too bad, I said. Kids who don't keep promises don't get to go to the forest. I needed to give mine a good scolding, too. It was dangerous for kids to break promises, especially ones they'd made so they could work alone when their parents are busy. Dad, please, don't do this, Tuli cried, clinging to my arm when I tried going to the bedroom. She was desperate this time, but just as much as she loved her little sister, mine needed a proper talking to. No, I'm not letting mine go to the forest again. This is what happens when you don't keep your promises. Oh, boy. Mine must have heard my voice because she looked up at me. Her face was still red and her eyes wet from the fever, but that didn't stop her from speaking up. Dad, one more, just once. Need to make clay tablets. I'd expected a sorry or at least some kind of self-reflection, but no, apparently she still planned on doing something in the forest. The blood rushed to my head in an instant. What are you saying? I barked. Absolutely not. Mine let out a weak sigh, then looked at Tuli, who was now standing beside her. Okay, Tuli, I'll do it here then. Okay, Tuli replied, I'll make sure to bring them back. Hold on, Tuli, why are you just going along with this? And you, Mine, what are you planning to do here? Are you ignoring how furious I am? What's this you're talking about, I said? It's what made mine collapse, isn't it? No way am I going to let you bring it back here. Mine's face became cold and expressionless. It was like something had switched in her. Out of nowhere, she turned into a completely different person. Her golden eyes narrowed, and suddenly they weren't gold anymore. They blended from one color into the next like a surface of a thin layer of oil. Oh boy. Does her voice change here? I'm assuming he's going to say if it does or not. Do you mean that, Dad? Her quiet voice was so intense all of a sudden that I got chills. I'm guessing it's like when she became Darth Mine back in the temple with all that stuff, was crushing the High Bishop. She wasn't acting anything like my daughter, and I instinctively took a step back. Of course I do. I see. Mine looked away as if she completely lost interest in me. Then I'll need to squash Faye and the others like they squashed my tablets. Mine's eyes kept turning all sorts of colors, and then her thin, cruel smile sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't even imagine what the girl in front of me was thinking. Something was seriously off about her. Dad, you need to tell Mine she can go to the forest again, Tuli exclaimed, hitting my arm over and over again, her face as white as if she'd seen a monster. Mine, what are you planning? I'm just thinking of a way to make sure that Faye can never go to the forest again either. Perhaps some psychological trauma, something from a horror movie. Maybe I should pull a Sudoku from the ring. Oh no, don't do that! You'll traumatize him even further! No, you'll scare everybody! That'll freak everybody out! Not just him! That'll freak anybody out! Seeing that in that world, they would think it's some kind of... I don't even know what they would think that is. Maybe it was just because of her fear, but she was mumbling words I couldn't even understand. To make things worse, the words I was able to make out sounded pretty gruesome. Was it just my imagination? It had to be. Maybe they'd only seemed gruesome because her voice was so strained? My daughter wasn't anyone that scary. What's Faye got to do with this? Pretty sure he's not important here. What do you mean, Mine asked. He's very important. Anyway, I understand what you mean. I understand completely. She nodded over and over again, clearly struggling to breathe. I'd ended up getting sucked into Mine's weird aura for a bit, but it seemed like everything had worked out in the end. She was a smart kid, so she had to understand what she'd done wrong. That's great. I'll make them cry themselves to death. Okay, I'm going to sleep now. Mine, you don't understand it all, do you? How is that what you took away from all this? What was running through her head to make her say something like that? Because, well, she's not going to get to go to the forest anymore, which means she's not going to be able to make her clay tablets, which means she's not going to have books. So of course she's going to freak out like this. And who made what and wake who cry? Me. I'm almost on the verge of tears myself. Shut up was Mine's immediate response. Leave me alone. Dad, come on, Tuli cried, trying to drag me away by the arm. Don't make Mine any angrier. Both of my daughters clearly wanted me out of the room, so I let Tuli pull me into the kitchen. Whoa. Tuli, was that really Mine? I asked. This must be what happens when she gets really mad. She got like this when Faye and his friends stepped on her tablets, too. Her eyes started glowing and went all terrifying. I remember she was also letting off some kind of yellow mist. Everyone was really scared. That's her mana. Her mana was going out of control there. And this is why the noble kids have to learn to keep their emotions in check, or else things like this would happen, or worse. Yeah, I was scared too. Must have been even worse for the kids. Mine cheered up after we started making the tablet things again, and none of us dared to say we should stop and go home. After what I'd just seen, that was no surprise. I would have wanted to leave her alone, too. I ended up having to plead with Mine that it was almost time for the gate to close, Tuli said. She only stopped when Let's said that he'd help her finish the tablets next time. The rest of us promised as well before we left. So, Tuli had only managed to keep mine under control by saying they'd go back to the forest another time. Then I'd come along and said that mine was banned from going there ever again. Now I understand. Dad, can mine go to the forest just one more time? It's scary how angry at Faye and the others she is. What does she mean when she says she'll squash them like they squashed her tablets? What even are those tablet things? I think she means she's going to flatten them like they flattened her tablets. But how? Tuli muttered. Will she actually stomp them to bits? And what's she going to do to stop them from going to the forest again? How would she make them cry? Dad, what do you think is going to happen to them? If you let mine do it, she'd crush them to death. She'd crush them to death with their mana. What do you think she'd do? She's too physically weak to do anything physical to them, so magic would be the only way to do it, but they don't know this. If she really was being serious, then the fastest way for her to achieve her goal would be to cripple Faye and the others or slice the tendons in their legs. The blood immediately drained from my face. Doing something like that would make mine a criminal. No two ways about it. Just what was she planning? Best way to stop her? Let her go to the forest again, so she won't do it. Tuli, what can we do to stop mine? I don't know. Try asking Lutz. He's the one who stopped mine in the forest. The next day, I pulled Lutz aside when he was passing through the gate and asked him what mine had meant. It was possible that Tuli had just been taking her too seriously, but Lutz cut down my remaining hopes like they were nothing. I mean, she's obviously gonna smash Faye and the others to pieces. Nobody can stop mine when she got those rainbow eyes. What? Mine's like a Fae beast that'll chomp your leg the moment you let your guard down and never let go. She'll accomplish anything that she set her mind on, no matter what she has to do or how long it'll take her. He puffed out his chest. Impressive, right? Yeah, impressive in a way, but at the same time terrifying. Lutz, is her head on right? That would make her real dangerous if she wants to hurt someone, wouldn't it? And why are you acting all proud of her? She's my daughter, not yours. Don't dip, dude. Heck, if she didn't have mana, then she would have been his love interest. It's the same thing with the clay tablets. They're the reason mine spent 3 whole months building up enough stamina to go to the forest. Nothing can stop her from getting what she wants. She cares about the tablets that much? It really hadn't occurred to me that mine was so interested in making those tablet things. Maybe I'd been too quick to ban her from working on them? But just as I was starting to have a change of heart, Lutz dropped another bomb. Let's see. Faye and his group ruined the tablets that mine put so much work into making. This meant she had to remake them, which made us late to leave. Then she came down with a fever on her way back. She got banned from the forest now, too, so now she can't even go fetch the tablet she's already made. That's a lot to be angry about, and it's all going to be directed at Faye, huh? Faye's lot, huh? I wonder if they're going to survive. Don't say that! Do you want my daughter to be a criminal? She'd said that she was going to make them cry. That was all. Everything was going to be fine. I really wanted to believe that. Well, you're the one who would be making her a criminal. Huh? Me? You're the one who banned her from going to the forest and making her tablets, right? You know, the thought of mine going all out on someone really scares me. I support her, but I don't get in her way. And as for putting a stop to her efforts entirely? No way! Absolutely no way! It scares you, I repeated, blinking. Mine was almost 6, but anyone who saw her would think she was only 3 or 4. She was weak, sickly, and had barely any stamina to speak of. For those reasons, I'd assumed that her going all out wouldn't actually mean much. But here, Lutz was in total disagreement. I mean, mine's brain doesn't work like ours does, he explained, looking completely serious. Sure, if she went after them with a weapon, she'd be too weak to do any damage. But if she never approached a situation like that, I don't know what she'd do in any detail, but I can tell you one thing. She'd find out their weaknesses and target them when they least expected. Real scary. Oh, God, you don't want to go against her. I groaned. I'd never even considered that Lutz and I might have different opinions like that. I, for one, couldn't even imagine mine being so ruthless. But the unimaginable was terrifying in itself. You'll believe that. You'll believe that when you see her crush the High Bishop. You'll believe she's capable of that. Not long ago, she beat even Sieg. He actually had to beg her to stop. Mine said that strength isn't everything. She's actually right. Lately, I've started beating my brothers, too. Hold on, what? This is the first I'm hearing about... Yeah, first I'm hearing about this. When did this happen? Yeah, what'd she do to beat Sieg? What's my daughter been up to? I want answers here. When did she do this to Sieg? And, what did she do? And what happened? What caused it? That's what I want to know. Lutz, this is a serious question. How can I keep mine's wrath under control? Pile a ton of clay in front of her. If you do that, all she'll think about is finishing her tablets. After my conversation with Lutz, I very begrudgingly decided to give mine permission to return to the forest. The last thing I wanted was for her to end up a criminal. But when I gave her the good news, she puffed out her cheeks in displeasure. Oh, but I came up with so many ways to get my revenge. Wouldn't it be a shame to let them go to waste? Even after battling a fever, she'd apparently made plans to stomp her enemies. Definitely not. Forget about revenge. I wasn't sure whether we'd end up in this mess as a result of mine being too smart or too angry, but we'd escape by the skin of our teeth. I'd save my daughter from the future as a criminal and phase bunch from an entire untimely demise, keeping the peace and protecting my family's happiness. Les deserved all my gratitude for having helped me resolve this. I sighed in relief, but then suddenly something occurred to me. Wait. What happened to punishing her for breaking her promise? You have to find a different way to do that. Okay, now I remember what I was going to look up earlier. I'll do that after this. Wilma, Servants of Sister Christine. A previously unpublished chapter that appeared in the web novel around the time of Part 2, Volume 1. It focuses on how Wilma spent her days in the orphanage after becoming an attendant and provides an insight into how she sees mine and the orphans. Also included is her conversation with Rosina about the latter's future in the temple. So essentially the conversation she has with Rosina to get her to essentially do her job as an attendant and not just sit there playing the harpspiel all day. Author's note. Rosina started out as a troublemaker in Mine's eyes, but that was because their views of the world around them were so contradictory. I wanted to write a chapter exploring Rosina's perspective in a little more detail, and ended up choosing Wilma to be the narrator as readers were more familiar with the character and seemed to understand her better. Sister Mine, an apprentice blue shrine maiden, recently accepted me as an attendant. I expressed to her my desire to stay within the confines of the orphanage. In response, she granted me her approval, as well as the duties of taking care of the pre-baptism children and overseeing the orphanage. Have the divine gifts been served to everyone, I asked? Yes. Then let us offer our prayers and gratitude. Almighty King and Queen of the endless skies, who doth grace us with thousands upon thousands of lives to consume, Almighty Eternal Five, who rule the mortal realm, I offer thanks and prayers to thee, and do take part in the meal so graciously provided. The pre-baptism children echoed my prayer, then instantly began devouring their lunch. Food was brought to the orphanage only after the adult priests and shrine maidens and then the apprentices had enjoyed their shares, so the orphans were made to wait longer than anyone else. Their hunger was clear from the ravenous fury with which they ate. I did feel sorry for the children that they had to wait so long before every meal, but at the same time I was overjoyed that they were now always guaranteed something to eat. Before, they had been entirely reliant on scraps, sometimes receiving nothing at all. Today's food is wonderful, isn't it? I asked. I ate my meals with the other adults, so my duties here were to teach the children how to eat properly and clean up after themselves. There were 6 of them in total, and looking after them all at once was no easy feat. The soup's good. Do you think Lizzie helped today? Look at how neatly cut all these vegetables are. Where the quantity of divine gifts one day was large or small, there will always be soup on the table for the children to eat. The soup itself seemed to embody everything that Sister Mine had done for the orphanage, so I always thought about her whenever I saw it. Sister Mine is the very reason we have the soup to begin with, I explained. She taught us how to make it, she allows us to gather ingredients from the forest, and she pays us for the paper we make so that we can buy whatever we need. You always tell us that, Wilma, one of the children said, and now you're going to say be grateful to Sister Mine. The other children all nodded in agreement. They were teasing me, but I didn't doubt they really were appreciative of everything that Sister Mine had done for them. She had cleansed them, given them food, and allowed them to experience the outside world. It was the duty of Grey Priests and Shrine Maidens to clean the halls used by the Blue Priests, and as the Blue Priests never visited the orphanage, our surroundings were left to grow dirtier by the day. This made it harder for us to keep ourselves clean, so we at least tried to maintain the places that were frequented most. In short, the dining hall was never terribly unclean, nor were the rooms of the apprentices and the adults. The pre-baptism children weren't quite as fortunate, however. They were customarily looked after by the Grey Shrine Maidens who had given birth, and would not leave the basement even for their meals. So most of us never saw or even really thought about them. I couldn't have been the only one who felt so shocked when Sister Mine's attendant, Fran, revealed the awful state in which those children had been living. It had taken the intervention of someone outside the orphanage for us to realize that there was no longer any shrine maidens in the basement, and that the poor souls still inside were receiving barely any food from the apprentices. Wilma, can we go to the workshop when we're done? One child asked. Only after you put your dishes away and washed your hands and face, I replied. Gil will scold you if you dirty the paper. What's scarier than Gil? I had heard all the stories about Gil yelling at the orphans in the workshop and kicking them out when he had to, but I didn't know much about this Lutz boy, aside from the fact that he was an apprentice merchant whom Sister Mine trusted completely. He always shouts things like, do you know how much time and effort went into making even this one sheet of paper, said one of the children as they continued their gossiping. He got mad at me the other day before I even touched anything, another child, Rico, added. He put his hands on his hips and said in an exaggerated voice, Do you lot know how much this stuff sells for? Don't touch the dang product with your dirty hands. The other kids laughed. You sound just like him. I was honestly quite surprised to hear the children speaking as they were. Such harsh tones and crass language were never used in the temple. If we mess up the paper, then he won't let us go to the forest. He got violent a little while ago. I tried to warn him that violence isn't good, but he just said to blame whoever forces him to use it. To me, the Mind Workshop was a completely different world within the temple, operated on a blend of rules that reflected Sister Mind's understanding of merchant and temple customs. Of course, I was basing this assumption entirely on the stories I'd overheard. My fear of men kept me from ever going to the workshop myself. Though I must acknowledge that the orphanage is moving down a similar path thanks to Sister Mind's influence as the orphanage director. Cleaning the orphanage as we did the temple, making our own food so that we had enough for everyone, earning our own money so that we could support ourselves instead of relying on divine gifts. Sister Mind was teaching us all sorts of things that I could only assume came naturally to commoners. Despite everything she had done for us, Sister Mind was always so humble. I merely taught you how to improve your life, she would say. The progress you have made is the result of your own hard work. Perhaps that was true, but the temple was otherwise made up of nobles and orphans, some of whom could have taught us what to do. I was so grateful that the gods had sent us Sister Mind. She praised me as a saint due to how I looked after the children, but I thought she was much more deserving of the title. Although, considering her young age, perhaps she is less a saint and more the divine child of the gods. That actually would make sense. I giggled to myself, then recalled what Sister Mind had said this morning while visiting the orphanage. We had spoken about Rosina, whom Sister Mind had also recently taken as an attendant. Sister Christine, Rosina and my former mistress, had returned to the noble's quarters some time ago. Despite the fact, Rosina still clings to her memory and principles as if we were still in her service. It made her very ill-suited to become the attendant of a commoner, especially when Sister Christine's and Sister Mind's expectations were so drastically different. I had made a request to Sister Mind, which she had said she would consider, but I was certain that Rosina would soon be returned to the orphanage. Rosina was a genuine beauty. She had matured facial features, flowing chestnut hair, and blue eyes that shone like jewels. As a lover of all things beautiful, Sister Christine had adored all those things about her. But the two had gotten along so well because of more than just that. They were almost the same age and were equally as interested and proficient in the arts. Thus, after being separated from her family and sent to the temple, Sister Christina treated Rosina as a true friend. It was clear to me that Rosina was expecting the same treatments from Sister Mind, but she was being far too optimistic. It shouldn't be too long now. Sister Mind had said that she was going to consult all her attendants and discuss matters with Rosina after lunch. It was likely to be a painful experience for Rosina if she did not accept the reality that she was no longer serving Sister Christine. I sent the children off to the workshop and then went to my room, whereupon I took out the boards I was using to help make karata. The game was going to be Sister Mind's gift to the children, so I needed to be extra careful. My art would teach them the visages of the gods, so there was a lot of pressure, but it was such a worthwhile endeavor. Sister Mind's karata were wonderful indeed. They had originally been made for Gil to help him learn his letters, and he occasionally brought them to the dining hall for the other children to play with. Their effectiveness as a learning material was impossible to ignore. In what had felt like no time at all, the children had memorized the alphabet and the names of the gods. Using the pen and ink that Sister Mind gave me, I carefully started drawing the gods and their divine instruments on the boards in front of me, which were smooth and polished to a sheen. I'd read the karata so many times now that I could recite pretty much all of them by heart. The children knew them all too, so I could always ask for their help when necessary. I enjoyed looking after the children, but the elation I felt when absorbed in my art was something truly special. It was like a reminder that I had been starved of my passion for much too long. I was several illustrations into my work when there came a knock at my door. I called for my visitor to enter, and in came Rosina, entirely as I predicted. She closed the door behind herself, and then tears welled up in her blue eyes. This was my first time seeing her so emotional. Just how much had she been holding in? Well, my Sister Mind is so cruel, Rosina complained. She told me to do the work of a grey priest. I'm not sure I followed. Tell me precisely what happened. Yes, of course. Please do listen. You are the only person who can understand me, Wilma. You also serve Sister Christine, after all. I stopped drawing and turned my chair around, prompting Rosina to take a seat on my bed. She immediately began to explain the situation, tears streaming down her face. Delia is the cruelest of all. I am not familiar with all Sister Mind's attendants. Can you tell me more about her? Ever since becoming Sister Mind's attendant, I spent almost all my time holed up in the orphanage, so my knowledge of the outside world was limited to what the children told me during meals. Fran and Gil assisted in cleaning the orphanage as Sister Mind's attendants and had been quite famous in the temple even before then, but this was my first time hearing the name Delia. Rosina nodded in response to my question and said she's a red-headed girl with a remarkably spirited personality. She also used to serve the High Bishop as an apprentice shrine maiden. She was 8 years old, as I was told, which meant she had been in the basement where Rosina and I were returned to the orphanage. Someone with red hair surely could have stood out in my mind, and yet... I would expect to remember this 8-year-old apprentice, I said, but I have no recollection of ever seeing her. The High Bishop took her in immediately after her baptism, so she went straight from the basement to the noble section of the temple, skipping the first floor of the orphanage entirely. She told me as much when I said that I didn't recognize her, and she sounded very proud of herself the entire time. She announced that she would one day become the High Bishop's concubine, and without a hint of shame. I agree! So mine and Rosina are of one mind on this one. They both agree that that's shameful. But still. Well, Rosina's view of the world is skewed too, so yeah. Oh, what would Sister Christina have said upon hearing such a thing? Sister Christina loathed the Grey Shrine Maidens who gave flowers, even going as far as to call them talentless women who offered nothing to the world but their bodies. As a result, Rosina and I had come to oppose the idea of one day being taken by blue priests ourselves. The other Grey Shrine Maidens of the orphanage did not share our revulsion to flower offerings, however. Life had grown harder over the past few years. Labor was more demanding and divine gifts in shorter supply, and many saw giving flowers as a small price to pay to ensure they didn't go hungry. Is it really so strange that a child who spent so long in the basement without any Grey priest to care for her wishes to leave the orphanage and live a stable life, I asked. Imagine if you had been locked down there. Oh, do not say such things, Wilma. The thought alone makes me queasy. Rosina had been the first to run away when we were ordered to watch the children in the basement. She was undeniably taking after Sister Christine, who had always said that she wishes to see nothing but beauty. I could not help but sigh when I thought about how different our previous mistresses was from Sister Mine, who had sent Gil to save the children through any means necessary after coincidentally stumbling upon them. Delia has no sense of culture, does not understand art, and describes the sweet sounds of the harpsichord as unpleasant to the ear, Rosina continued. She is unpleasant to the ear, always saying geez this and geez that. Oh, but Sister Mine did not scold her for her ignorance. Instead, she merely listened with a smile. In a sense, Rosina and Delia were quite similar. Both had moved to the nobles section of the temple without needing to endure any manual work. Such labor was a crucial part of serving as an apprentice attendant, however, which was presumably why Sister Mine had allowed Delia to continue uninterrupted. Furthermore, Delia spoke poorly of me to Sister Mine, Rosina exclaimed. She went on to describe everything Delia had said during their meeting, and even stressed that things she had repeated, which made Delia's irritation and anger all the more apparent. How did the others respond to this, I asked. Did anyone come to your aid, or did they all support Delia? The latter, Gil, even began to spout such nonsense, saying that those who do not work shall not eat, and that I should not be playing music at night. If she was playing the harpsichord as late into the night as Sister Christina had used to, then I could see why everyone was so displeased. Delia and Gil were both apprentices, and presumably went to bed as early as the children of the orphanage. I can understand why they might find your playing a bother, I said. If you played here in the orphanage while the children were trying to sleep, I would be very troubled. Wilma? Sister Christine was always late to rise, but those in Sister Mine's chambers are up as early as we are in the orphanage, are they not? Rosina looked slightly downcast. She had probably heard that same argument once already. That aside, I continued, I seem to recall that Gil was once considered an uncontrollable problem child. He certainly seems to have changed, does he not? The most I really remembered about Gil was how often the Grey Priest who oversaw cleaning in the temple had sent him to the repentance chamber. Everyone in the orphanage had doubted their ears when it was revealed that he was being made the attendant of a blue shrine maiden. Oh, Wilma, you wouldn't have believed your ears if you had been there to see him kneeling and receiving praise. I remember thinking he was mesmerized by Sister Mine the last time I saw him. She had given him Carta, so they presumably got along very well indeed. Well, what did Fran say, I asked. He used to serve the High Priest, so he must have viewed things from a more professional standpoint than the young apprentices. It was common knowledge to those of us in the orphanage that Fran had previously served the High Priest, and was now tasked with teaching and guiding Sister Mine, who had grown up a commoner. He was also the only adult Grey Priest among her attendants, and was clear as a glance how much she trusted and relied on him. Fran is a Grey Priest, but he does not follow my instructions in the least, Rosina replied. He won't do normal manual work either, and can you believe it? He even gives me orders. Is it not obvious that he would? Oh, and why is that? Rosina looked genuinely confused. If she truly was this blind to the reality of her situation, then it was little wonder that she had earned the ire of Sister Mine's attendants. It was no wonder that Sister Mine came to me for my opinion on her. Fran is Sister Mine's head attendant, whereas you are a new apprentice. But I played the harpsichord and... Rosina, Sister Mine is not Sister Christine. You cannot expect your life to return to what it once was. Sister Mine said the same thing. What else did she say? That I should stop playing music after 7th bell so as to not bother the others. She also said that she would allow me to do paperwork instead of manual labor, as she understands that my hands are important for playing music. Paperwork, I repeated. Rosina gave a big nod. Sister Mine has too few attendants. Thus she has entrusted Fran with her paperwork, Gil with overseeing the workshop and the boys' building of the orphanage, and Delia with the upkeep of her chambers. She certainly does sound short-staffed. Normally, an attendant's only duty was to manage the lifestyle of the person they served, but Sister Mine was both the orphanage director and the forewoman of the mine workshop. Her obligations were too broad in scope for a mere three people to manage. Your duties are looking after the girls' building and doing art, correct? Rosina asked me. Sister Mine says she cannot afford me to do anything but play music. Then I must take on other jobs as well. Rosina was almost an adult. Of course it would be problematic if she was incapable of doing the work expected of all good attendants. So what kind of paperwork were you being asked to do? I asked. She wished for me to write letters on her behalf and oversee ledgers for her chambers and the workshop. In essence, I aimed to lessen Fran's burden. Well, Delia and Gil would struggle to do that kind of work, as they have just become attendants and still cannot read or write. Sister Mine must think you are a better candidate, considering that you are educated and almost of age. I started feeling as if my own flaws were staring me in the face. Upon becoming an attendant, one started learning how to read, write, and do math. But while those of us who served Sister Christine could argue over who had the most beautiful handwriting or who could write the most touching poems, we had no experience doing formal paperwork. We were also lacking when it came to math, meaning we would provide very little assistance on that front. Truly, we were attendants who specialized only in the arts. If she wishes to ease Fran's burden, then she could simply take on more attendants, Rosina said. Instead, she wants me to learn things I do not understand and am incapable of doing. In her own words, she does not need an attendant who will not work. That does not surprise me. Sister Christine may have been a noble, but Sister Mine is a commoner. I cannot see her having enough money to hire more than 10 attendants. She had deliberately taught the pre-baptism children to earn their food. Someone who held such a belief certainly did not have the funds to hire as many attendants as she needed. Sister Mine is a blue shrine maiden, is she not? I find that hard to believe that Sister Christine was unique. The blue priests in the temple today have only 5 attendants at most. It was normal to hire 3 to 5 attendants as well as chefs and servants. In contrast, Sister Christine's retinue had included 2 servants from her home, 6 gray shrine maidens for enjoying the arts, 4 gray priests for manual labor and administrative work, several chefs and helpers, and various tutors. Using her as a baseline was just plain unrealistic. Rosina, could it be that you are just not suited to serving Sister Mine? I asked. Given all the areas in which you disagree, I imagine that neither party is going to be satisfied with this arrangement. Would you tell me to return to the orphanage as well, Wilma? I felt a sudden pang in my chest. Sister Mine had suggested that Rosina leave her service. I'd expected something like that to happen. Your thoughts and deeds are so contradictory to Sister Mine's, I said. She must believe that she has no other choice. I can choose between returning to the orphanage or accepting a lifestyle that is nothing like the one we had with Sister Christine. Sister Mine told me to do so by tomorrow. I see. Then the rest depends on you, Rosina. If, as I suspected, Sister Mine had been so lenient as a result of my request, then there was nothing more I could say. It was up to Rosina to make her choice. Wilma, do you not think it is a mistake to have a shrine maiden do the work of a grey priest? Rosina asked as she saw me return to my drawing. I could tell she was troubled that I hadn't sided with her, even considering our similar histories. I do not know. Sister Christine was the only person who maintained that role. Then I must be the one who is mistaken. After leaving the orphanage, Rosina had only ever known life under Sister Christine, even though she longed to return to those halcyon days. It was understandable and painful to be refused the things one cherished so deeply. But Sister Christine was never going to return to the temple, and the attitude she had promoted wasn't applicable elsewhere. I wouldn't say that, Rosina. My point is that Sister Christine's rules apply only to those in her service. Now that you are working for Sister Mine, her rules apply instead. So, my perspective doesn't apply? Consider your situation carefully. If you had been taken in by a blue priest rather than Sister Mine, then you might not have been given an instrument. You might have been used to offer flowers. Would you have expressed your dissatisfaction then? In a situation like that, her fate would already be sealed. Nothing would come of an apprentice gray shrine maiden telling a blue priest that she did not want to go anywhere without an instrument or that she was too cultured to offer flowers. Sister Mine has not forbidden you from playing music at all, has she? I continued. She said only that she cannot afford for you to play music all day and that you need to do the same work the other attendants are doing. She even showed you some consideration by saying you could focus on paperwork instead of doing manual labor. Above all else, did you not vow to serve Sister Mine from the bottom of your heart, or were you merely paying lip service? It was easy to sever ties with an attendant who did not meet your expectations, but it seemed to me that Sister Mine was compromising as much as she possibly could. Sister Mine has already gone to great lengths to make you feel more comfortable, I said. If you are still not satisfied, then I expect you will only ever be happy with Sister Christine. It would be best for you to return to the orphanage before you trouble anyone further. Rosina stared at me in a daze, looking entirely defeated. Tears began to well up in her eyes as she gazed downward and mumbled, I see now that even after becoming the attendant of an apprentice shrine maiden, I cannot return to those days. Indeed, nobody else can become Sister Christine. She hung her head and started to weep quietly. It was best to leave her be, I thought, as I simply continued with my illustrations while she let out her pent-up emotions. Eventually, her tears would dry on their own. After a while, Rosina finally looked up again. Wilma, she said, her eyes now brimming with resolve, I would like to have as much music in my life as possible. That's why I shall return to Sister Mine and learn to do the task she gives me. Rosina had clung to the past for such a long time, but now here she was, facing the future at last. It was such an extraordinary, beautiful sight that I regret not having the means to paint it. Sister Mine will appreciate your efforts to improve, just as she rewarded those who worked hard in the orphanage. There is not much more I can do for you than listen to your woes. But I wish you all the success in the world. Several days later, Sister Mine arrived at the orphanage wearing a radiant smile. She was an apprentice blue shrine maiden, but she would always be mistaken for the pre-baptism children. You spoke to Rosina, didn't you, Wilma? She asked. Though she does not seem particularly fond of the work, she is trying her best even at math. Thank you. There was so much joy in her golden eyes, and she looked so innocent and adorable that were I not in her service, I might have embraced her as I did the children. She was a commoner, and that was precisely the reason she felt so much like the rest of us. It was not that she lacked elegance, far from it, but rather that she lacked the forcefulness and high-minded dignity of a pure-bred noble like Sister Christine. Sister Mine, it is my understanding that the High Priest assigned Rosina to you so you might receive a cultural education, I said. There may not be any blue shrine maidens in the temple for you to learn from, but Rosina is the next best alternative. She was treated as Sister Christine's friend and educated alongside her, and if she is working hard to overcome her dislikes, then perhaps she can do the same and accept her noble education. Sister Mine faltered, her eyes flitting about the room. As someone who stood above others, it was unacceptable for her to show weakness so openly. Sister Mine, when you and your attendants were all gathered for your discussion, did Rosina avert her gaze? Did she cast her eyes down and weep when nobody took her side? No, she kept looking ahead and clearly stated her opinion, Sister Mine replied, blinking at me in confusion. It was cute, but that didn't make it okay. Indeed, she carried herself like a proper noble. Only when she came to me in private did she cry and allow her true emotions to show. And I must become like Rosina, Sister Mine asked, looking up at me and pursing her lips. I noticed the same resolve in her eyes as I had seen in Rosina's. If a great shrine maiden raised in the temple can carry herself as nobles do, then so can you. Do your best to learn from Rosina's behavior. Right. I can only hope that Rosina and Sister Mine will be a good influence on one another. That was my wish as I offer my prayers to the gods. Okay, I'm going to end this one off here. I'll see you guys in the next one.